The cold rain pelted against the reinforced windows of Frontier 7, a research outpost located on the edge of explored space. James Wilson stared out at the dark alien landscape, watching lightning flash across the purple-tinged sky. 3 years into his assignment as the station's xenobiologist, he still found the weather patterns of planet LV-227 fascinating. A sharp beeping from his monitor pulled his attention away from the window. The station's perimeter sensors had detected movement, something large. James frowned. Most native wildlife avoided the station's energy field. "Computer, show me exterior camera 7, he commanded. The screen flickered to life, showing rain-soaked terrain illuminated by periodic flashes of lightning. At first, James saw nothing unusual. Then a bolt of lightning revealed a massive shape dragging itself toward the station. It collapsed, then struggled to rise again. "Magnify," James ordered, leaning closer. The creature was unlike anything he'd ever seen, at least 2 meters long, with iridescent scales and multiple limbs. What caught his attention most was the dark fluid pooling beneath it. "It's injured," he muttered to himself. James grabbed his field kit and rain gear, heading for the airlock. The station AI's voice followed him. "Dr. Wilson, regulations state that unknown organisms must not be approached without proper containment protocols. Log that I'm conducting an emergency biological assessment," James replied, pulling on his protective suit. "Something's dying out there." Outside, the rain hit his helmet with a deafening roar. He approached the creature cautiously, scanner in hand. The readings made him stop in his tracks. "That's impossible," he whispered. The scanner identified the creature as Voreth, a species James had only read about in classified reports. The Voreth were considered the galaxy's most lethal predators, supposedly hunted to extinction centuries ago after devastating attacks on colonial worlds. Yet here was one, alive but badly wounded. The Voreth's eyes snapped open, 6 glowing amber orbs that locked onto James with terrifying intelligence. It made no move to attack, perhaps too weak. James could see plasma burns across its armored hide. Weapon damage, not natural injury. Someone had been hunting it. Protocol demanded immediate termination of any Voreth specimen. They were classified as a Level 1 biological threat, the highest danger rating. James knew he should alert the station's security team. Instead, he knelt beside the creature and began scanning its wounds. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said softly, knowing the creature couldn't understand him. "I'm going to try to help." The Voreth made a low rumbling sound, something between a growl and a click. Its limbs tensed, but it remained still as James worked. Getting it inside would be impossible without help, but calling for assistance meant explaining what he found. James made a quick decision. "Computer, prepare the isolation lab and deactivate routine monitoring in that section. Medical Emergency Protocol Wilson 7. Warning: deactivating monitoring violates station safety regulations," the AI responded. "Override. Authorization Wilson J113. Override accepted. Isolation lab prepared." Using the hover slud from his field kit, James carefully moved the massive creature. The Voreth remained eerily still during transport, those amber eyes never leaving him. Inside the isolation lab, James worked quickly to stabilize his patient. The wounds were severe. Plasma burns had penetrated the creature's natural armor in multiple places. As he treated each injury, he noticed something remarkable. The Voreth seemed to understand he was helping. It positioned itself to give him better access to its wounds, even using one limb to point to injuries he hadn't yet spotted. This wasn't mindless beast behavior. This was cooperation. "You understand what's happening, don't you?" James whispered. The Voreth blinked its 6 eyes in sequence, a deliberate pattern that couldn't be random. As James finished applying the last bandage, his communications device buzzed. It was Dr. Mason, the station director. "Wilson, what's this about emergency protocols in the isolation lab? What are you working on?" James looked at the Voreth, knowing his career, perhaps his life, now balanced on the most important decision of his existence. Just a routine sample analysis, he lied. Nothing to worry about. On the treatment table, the Vorath watched him with those intelligent eyes. James had just violated every protocol in the book, and he knew he would do it again. For 3 days, James barely left the isolation lab. He slept in short bursts on a cot he'd dragged in, always keeping one eye on his unusual patient. The Vorath was healing at an astonishing rate, its biological systems far more advanced than anything in the xenobiology textbooks. "You're quite the medical miracle," James said, checking the creature's vital signs on the morning of the 4th day. The Vorath had been watching him intently. Now it raised one of its front limbs and tapped its chest, then extended the limb toward James. James blinked in surprise. "Are you trying to communicate?" The creature repeated the gesture, adding a series of clicks and rumbles. James scrambled for his tablet and pulled up a basic drawing program. He quickly sketched a simple figure of himself, then handed the tablet to the Vorath. To his amazement, the creature took the stylus in one of its smaller appendages and drew a rough but recognizable picture of its own form. "Incredible," James whispered. He pointed to himself. "James." Then he pointed to the drawing of the Vorath with a questioning look. The creature made a sound like stones grinding together, followed by a sharp click. "I can't quite make that sound," James admitted. He thought for a moment. "How about I call you Rex? It means king in an ancient human language. You're certainly impressive enough to deserve it." The Vorath, Rex, tilted its head, then made a gesture that looked remarkably like a nod. Their breakthrough was interrupted by the lab door sliding open. Dr. Mason stood there, his face pale with shock. "Wilson, what have you done?" he gasped, reaching for the emergency alarm on the wall. Rex moved with frightening speed, positioning himself between James and the station director. A deep, warning growl filled the room. "Don't," James said quickly, stepping forward with his hands raised. "Dr. Mason, please. He's not dangerous." "That's a Vorath," Mason hissed, his hand still hovering near the alarm. "They wiped out 3 colonies before the purge." "I think those stories might be exaggerated," James said cautiously. "He's shown no aggression. In fact, he's displaying intelligence and communication skills." Rex, seeming to understand the tension, slowly backed away and returned to the examination table. He picked up the tablet and drew something new, a crude drawing of several Vorath figures surrounded by what looked like ships firing weapons. "I think he's trying to tell us something about what happened to his people," James said. Mason's scientific curiosity momentarily overcame his fear. He stepped closer, examining the drawing. "Is it possible we've misunderstood their species all this time?" Their discussion was cut short by an urgent alert from the station computer. "Incoming transmission from Galactic Council. Priority Alpha." The main screen flickered on, showing the stern face of Council Representative Dorn. "Frontier 7, our long-range scans indicate you may have encountered a Class 1 biological threat. Sensors detected Vorath biological signatures 3 days ago. Please confirm containment and termination of the specimen." James felt his blood run cold. Rex, watching the screen, went completely still. "Representative Dorn," Dr. Mason replied formally, "we are still analyzing the situation. No confirmation at this time." Dorn's eyes narrowed. "This is not a request, Doctor. Voraths are to be eliminated on site. A containment team is already en route to your location. Estimated arrival: 48 hours. Secure the specimen until then." The transmission ended abruptly. "They're coming to kill him," James said quietly. Dr. Mason looked conflicted. "Wilson, I should report this. But—" he glanced at Rex, who was watching them both with those intelligent eyes. The Vorath had picked up the tablet again and was drawing something new, what looked like a spaceship. "He understands exactly what's happening," Mason said with wonder. "What are you going to do?" James met Rex's gaze. "I'm not letting them harm him." We have 48 hours to figure out an escape plan. Rex made a sound that was almost like a purr and added to his drawing. 2 figures inside the ship, 1 human and 1 Vorith. The following morning, James entered the isolation lab with a makeshift communication board he'd created overnight. Rex watched with obvious interest as James placed it on the table between them. "Let's try something new," James said, pointing to various images on the board. Food, water, danger, safe. He demonstrated each concept with simple gestures. Rex studied the board, then extended a clawed limb and touched the danger symbol. He made a sweeping motion toward the lab door and beyond. "Yes," James nodded. "Danger is coming, but we'll figure something out." Dr. Mason entered, carrying a secure data tablet. His expression was grim. "I've been researching Vorith encounters in the classified archives. Something doesn't add up." He placed the tablet down, showing James historical footage. "This is supposedly a Vorith attack on Outpost Sigma 9, but look closely at the markings on these creatures." James studied the grainy video of reptilian predators tearing through a colonial settlement. "These aren't the same species as Rex. Similar, but the coloration and line structure are different." "Exactly," Mason said. "I think the Council has been using Vorith as a catch-all term for several predatory species, or worse, deliberately misidentifying them." Rex made a series of clicks and picked up the stylus. On a blank screen, he drew a group of his own kind, then another group of different-looking creatures. He drew a clear line between them. "You're saying you're not the same," James interpreted. "Different species." Rex tapped the board to indicate yes. The Vorith then drew something new, a planet with multiple moons and several dome-like structures. He pointed to himself, then to the drawing. "Your home?" James asked. Rex made an affirmative gesture, then drew ships approaching the planet. His next drawing showed destruction and his people fleeing. "They were attacked," Mason murmured, "driven from their home." Rex picked up the stylus again and drew what looked like crystals growing from the planet's surface. James and Mason exchanged glances. "Resources," Mason said. "I'd bet those crystals are valuable." So the story about Voriths being mindless killers might be propaganda to justify wiping them out for their resources, James concluded, a chill running down his spine. Rex suddenly tensed, his head turning toward the door seconds before the alert sounded. "Unscheduled shuttle docking at Bay 3, the computer announced. "They're early," Mason said, checking his tablet. "No, it's not the Council team. It's just the monthly supply run." James relaxed slightly, but Rex remained alert. The Vorith made a series of gestures toward the supply shuttle's location, then pointed to the escape drawing he'd made earlier. "You think we should take the supply shuttle?" James asked. Rex confirmed with a quick tap on the yes symbol. "It's not a bad plan," Mason admitted. "Supply shuttles have basic life support and enough fuel to reach the nearest outpost, but the pilot would report the theft immediately." Rex drew the pilot, then made a slashing motion across the drawing. "No," James said firmly, pointing to the danger symbol and shaking his head. "We don't harm anyone." The Vorith studied him for a long moment, then erased the pilot figure and drew him standing outside the shuttle instead. "A distraction," Mason interpreted. "We could create a reason for the pilot to leave the shuttle temporarily." James nodded slowly. "But what about you, Dr. Mason? You'd be implicated in helping us escape." Mason looked at Rex, who was watching him with those intelligent amber eyes. The creature picked up the stylus one more time and drew a simple image. 3 figures standing together, one clearly Mason, one James, and one Vorith. Below it, he drew the safe symbol. "I've been a scientist for 30 years, Mason said quietly. "In all that time, I've never encountered anything like this. If the Council is willing to exterminate an intelligent species for resources," he straightened his shoulders, "I'll create the distraction. You two get ready to move." Rex made a sound that resembled a purr and extended a clawed limb toward Mason. After a moment's hesitation, the older scientist took it in a careful handshake. "I hope I'm not making a terrible mistake," Mason muttered. James watched the unlikely handshake with a mixture of hope and fear. "If we're wrong about him, we're both dead. But I don't think we are." Rex tapped the safe symbol one more time, his 6 eyes blinking in that deliberate pattern that James had come to recognize as a promise. The supply shuttle pilot never knew what hit him, figuratively speaking. Dr. Mason's distraction involved a fabricated containment breach in the primary lab that required immediate assistance. The moment the pilot stepped away from his vessel, James and Rex made their move. "We have 3 minutes before security protocols kick in," James whispered as they crept toward the shuttle bay. Rex moved with surprising silence for a creature his size, his 6 eyes constantly scanning for threats. The supply shuttle sat unguarded, its loading ramp still down. James had never piloted anything larger than a research drone, but they had no choice. The alternative was waiting for the Council's containment team, and Rex's certain death. "Okay, big guy, we need tow," James began, but Rex was already moving past him into the shuttle, heading straight for the pilot's seat. "Wait, you know how to fly this thing." Rex made an affirmative clicking sound and began activating the shuttle's systems with practiced ease. His clawed limbs moved over the controls with surprising dexterity. "You're full of surprises," James muttered, securing the loading ramp behind them. The shuttle's engines hummed to life, just as alarms began blaring throughout the station. On the communications panel, the Station A's voice came through. "Unauthorized shuttle launch detected. Security protocols engage. Docking clamps will not release without proper authorization." James felt a moment of despair. They were trapped. Rex, however, seemed unconcerned. The Voref accessed the shuttle's maintenance systems and brought up a schematic of the docking mechanism. "You can override it?" James asked incredulously. Rex made a sound that almost resembled a laugh. With a series of precise inputs, he bypassed the station's security protocols. The docking clamps released with a heavy clunk. "Warning. Perimeter defense systems active. Unscheduled departures will be intercepted," the AI announced. Rex pushed the throttle forward. The shuttle lurched, then shot out of the bay with far more speed than James thought possible for a cargo vessel. The sudden acceleration threw him against the back of his seat. "Where did you learn to fly like this?" he gasped. On the view screen, automated defense drones deployed from the station, moving to intercept them. Rex banked the shuttle hard, diving toward the planet's turbulent atmosphere rather than heading for open space. "Are you crazy? The storm will tear us apart," James shouted, gripping his seat as the shuttle bucked against the violent air currents. The pursuing drones followed them into the storm, but quickly began falling behind. Their smaller size made them more vulnerable to the powerful winds. One by one, they spun out of control and disappeared from the sensors. Rex navigated the storm with incredible skill, using the lightning and electromagnetic interference to mask their trail. After 15 harrowing minutes, they emerged on the other side of the planet, away from the station's direct sensor range. James released his white-knuckled grip on the seat. That was impressive. Rex made a modest gesture, then pointed to the navigation system. The fastest route to the nearest populated system would take them through a dense asteroid field. "You want to go through there?" James asked. "That's suicide." Rex tilted his head and blinked his eyes in sequence, the gesture James had come to recognize as confidence. "All right. I trust you," James said, shaking his head in disbelief at his own words. Trusting the galaxy's most feared predator with his life would have seemed absurd just days ago. As they approached the asteroid field, the shuttle's sensors picked up a new signal, a Galactic Council cruiser changing course to intercept them. "They must have gotten word from the station," James said grimly. "That cruiser has weapons. We can't outrun it in this cargo shuttle." Rex made a determined sound and increased their speed, heading straight for the densest part of the asteroid field. The Council cruiser followed, clearly confident in its superior technology. What happened next left James speechless. Rex flew the shuttle through gaps that seemed impossibly narrow, using the asteroids themselves as shields against the cruiser's scanning beams. When the larger ship fired warning shots, Rex anticipated them seconds before they came, moving the shuttle with impossible precision. "How are you doing this?" James whispered, watching as Rex navigated with what could only be described as prescient awareness. The Voreth tapped his head with one limb while maintaining perfect control with his others. James understood. Some form of enhanced spatial awareness or sensory perception. 30 minutes into the asteroid field, the Council cruiser fell back, unwilling to risk further pursuit through such dangerous territory. Rex charted a course deeper into the field, toward what looked like empty space. "There's nothing out there," James said, checking the sensors. Rex made an insistent sound and continued on course. 10 minutes later, the sensors registered a small station hidden within a hollowed-out asteroid, completely invisible until they were almost upon it. "What is this place?" James wondered aloud as Rex began docking procedures. On the communication screen, Rex wrote a single word using the basic alphabet James had taught him. "Far-Inds." The hidden station was unlike anything James had ever seen. Built inside a massive hollowed asteroid, its interior glowed with bioluminescent light that pulsed gently along curved walls. As their shuttle completed docking procedures, James noticed the lack of standard security protocols. "No armed welcome party?" he asked nervously. Rex made a reassuring sound and led the way off the shuttle. The docking bay doors opened to reveal a surprising figure, a human man with wild gray hair and a patchy beard. He wore simple clothes without any official insignia. "By the stars, a Voreth," the man exclaimed, his eyes widening behind thick glasses. "I thought your kind was nearly gone from this sector." Rex moved forward and made a series of clicks and rumbles. The man listened carefully, then turned to James. "Welcome to Sanctuary. I'm Alan," he said, extending his hand. "Former Galactic Council Science Advisor, current political exile, and apparently friend to your remarkable companion here." James shook his hand, bewildered. "You understand him?" "Not perfectly, but enough," Alan replied. "I've spent 20 years studying species the Council would rather forget. Come, we should move somewhere more secure. The Council has ears everywhere, even this far out." Alan led them through winding corridors to a circular room filled with plants, screens, and what looked like decades of collected research materials. "Nice of Mason to help you escape," Alan said, activating a holographic display. "Always thought he had more spine than most Council scientists." "You know Dr. Mason?" James asked, surprised. "We were colleagues, long ago." Alan tapped controls, bringing up files marked with Council seals. "Before I discovered what the Council was really doing with my research." Rex moved to examine the holograms, focusing on images of planets that James didn't recognize. "What am I looking at?" James asked. Alan's face darkened. "The systematic elimination of species deemed threats to galactic expansion, or more accurately, threats to resource acquisition." He brought up a new set of documents, classified Council directives dating back over a century. "The Voreth were never the mindless killers we were told about," Alan explained. "They were in the way." The holograms shifted to show a planet with twin moons. Rex made a mournful sound and touched the image. "His homeworld," Alan confirmed. "Rich in crystalline formations called Nexus crystals, the most efficient energy conductors ever discovered. One crystal could power a city for a decade. And the Voreth lived on top of these crystals," James said, putting the pieces together. "The Council approached them for mining rights. The Voreth refused. The crystals were sacred to their culture, part of their life cycle somehow." Alan pulled up more documents. Rather than negotiate, the Council classified them as dangerous predators and authorized their elimination. Military strikes disguised as defensive actions. James felt sick. How many Vorith survived? Very few. Some escaped in ships. Others went into hiding. They've been hunted across the galaxy ever since. Alan turned to Rex. How many of your kind remain? Rex drew in the air. 6 marks. 6. James whispered in horror. Out of an entire civilization. Alan nodded grimly. The Council has a lot to answer for. Not just the Vorith. At least 8 other species met similar fates over the past century. He pulled up one final file, a biological report on Vorith physiology. Here's the other reason they were targeted. Vorith biology contains compounds that dramatically extend cellular life. In simple terms, their biology holds the secret to extending human life by centuries. They were exterminated for immortality drugs. James asked, disgusted. For power, Alan corrected. Extended life for the Council elite, unlimited energy from the crystals, and removal of any species that might challenge human dominance. Rex suddenly moved to the communication console, activating it with urgent gestures. What is it? James asked. Alan checked the system. Multiple ships approaching. Council signatures. They tracked us. James felt panic rising. Unlikely, Alan said, studying the data. This looks like a planned raid. They must have been watching Sanctuary for some time. Rex made a series of clicks and pointed to a small ship docked on the far side of the asteroid. The scout vessel? Yes, it might work, Alan agreed. It has stealth capabilities the Council doesn't know about. He turned to James. We have evidence that could expose everything. The false classifications, the genocide campaigns, all of it. If we could get this to the right people. What right people? James asked. Who would stand against the Council? The truth has power of its own, Alan said, copying files to a portable drive. The public doesn't know what's been done in their name. Independent worlds would rebel if this came to light. Rex made an urgent sound as proximity alarms began to blare throughout the station. Time to go, Alan said, handing James the drive. This contains everything. Coordinates to the remaining Vorith, proof of the Council's actions. All of it. Get it out. Make it known. You're not coming, James asked. Alan shook his head. Someone needs to slow them down. Rex placed a clawed hand on Alan's shoulder in what was clearly a gesture of respect. It's been an honor, Alan told the Vorith. Now go, change the narrative they've built. Show them what your kind truly is. As James and Rex rushed toward the scout ship, James clutched the drive that contained the truth about an entire erased civilization. The truth that could change everything. The scout ship slipped away from Sanctuary, just as the first Council vessel began docking procedures. James watched the asteroid grow smaller on their view screen, his heart heavy with worry for Alan. I hope he makes it, James said quietly. Rex made a solemn sound and activated the ship's stealth systems. Unlike the bulky supply shuttle, this vessel moved with impressive speed and agility. The Vorith seemed even more comfortable at its controls. Where are we heading? James asked, studying the unfamiliar star charts. Rex plotted a course toward what appeared to be an uninhabited sector. Before James could question further, the communication system crackled to life. Attention unidentified vessel. This is Commander Trent of the Galactic Enforcement Division. We have tracked your departure from a known criminal outpost. Power down and prepare to be boarded. A massive enforcement cruiser appeared on their sensors, moving to intercept. How did they find us so quickly? James muttered. Rex made an urgent gesture toward the drive Alan had given them. James quickly reviewed the files and found his answer. There's a traitor in the Council. Someone named Director Webb has been feeding information to Commander Trent for years. They've been hunting the last Voriths together. Rex growled, a sound that raised the hair on James's neck despite their newfound trust. We can't outrun that cruiser forever, James said, thinking quickly. We need to get this information public. The Vorath pointed to a nearby planet on their charts, a border world called Nexus Prime, known for its independent media networks that reached multiple systems. Perfect, James agreed. But we'll never make it there with that cruiser on our tail. Rex made a series of clicks and brought up a tactical display, showing a debris field between their position and the planet. He outlined a risky plan using the ship's visual interface. They would broadcast Alan's data while using the debris as cover, then make a run for the planet's surface. That's incredibly dangerous, James said, studying the plan. But it might work. They accelerated toward the debris field, the enforcement cruiser following at a distance, clearly wary of the dangerous territory. Once inside the field, Rex executed a series of maneuvers that confused the pursuers' tracking systems. James prepared the broadcast, including a personal message. This is xenobiologist James Wilson. What you're about to see is evidence of systematic genocide committed by the Galactic Council against multiple species, including the Vorath. The beings classified as dangerous predators were peaceful civilizations eliminated for their resources. He started the transmission just as their ship emerged from the debris field. Almost immediately, multiple smaller enforcement vessels deployed from the cruiser, moving to surround them. Transmission blocked, the ship's computer announced. They're jamming us. James slammed his fist against the console in frustration. Rex suddenly changed course, heading directly toward the cruiser itself. What are you doing? James demanded, alarmed. They'll destroy us. The Vorath made a confident sound and pushed the engines to maximum. They shot toward the cruiser at frightening speed, causing the smaller vessels to scatter in confusion. At the last possible moment, Rex pulled up, skimming the cruiser's hull so closely that their shields sparked against each other. In that brief contact, Rex activated a subroutine that piggybacked their transmission through the cruiser's own communication systems, bypassing the jamming. They're broadcasting our message through their own network, James realized, watching as confirmation signals appeared on their screen. The cruiser's weapon systems came online, targeting their small vessel. Rex pulled evasive maneuvers, but a glancing hit rocked their ship, damaging one engine. They began losing altitude, pulled toward Nexus Prime by its gravity. We're going down, James warned, strapping himself in as Rex fought for control. Their damaged ship crashed through the atmosphere, trailing smoke. Rex managed to aim for an unpopulated area, bringing them down with a bone-jarring impact that sent James's head slamming into the control panel. His vision blurred, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. When he regained focus, he saw enforcement troops surrounding their crashed vessel, weapons drawn. Commander Trent himself stood at the front, a tall figure in a black uniform. Exit the vessel immediately, Trent ordered through an amplifier. James looked at Rex, who seemed injured but conscious. What now? Before the Vorath could respond, the ground shook. A section of Earth collapsed near the enforcement troops, creating a sudden sinkhole. 2 officers, including Commander Trent, fell into the widening gap. Without hesitation, Rex burst from the ship, moving with incredible speed toward the sinkhole. The remaining troops raised their weapons, but froze in confusion as the Vorath leaped into the hole instead of attacking them. Moments later, Rex emerged, carrying Commander Trent and the other officer to safety. The troops stared in disbelief as the galaxy's most feared predator gently set down their commander. Trent himself seemed speechless, looking from Rex to the collapsing ground that would have claimed his life. As if on cue, the sky filled with approaching ships, not council vessels, but media crafts drawn by the broadcast that was now spreading across multiple systems. Rex returned to James's side, helping him stand as they faced the enforcement troops together. Your move, Commander, James said, his voice carrying in the sudden silence. The whole galaxy is watching now. The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of hearings, broadcasts, and public outrage. James sat in a conference room aboard the Galactic Council's central station, watching as Rex carefully adjusted the translator device now attached to his neck ridge. The technology, developed specifically for Vorath vocal patterns, had been rushed into production after the events on Nexus Prime. "Is it working properly?" James asked. "Yes," Rex replied, his voice emerging as a rumbling but understandable bass through the device. "Still strange to be heard in your language." The door slid open, and Commander Trent entered, followed by several council representatives. The commander's demeanor had changed dramatically since Rex had saved his life. Though still formal, the open hostility was gone. "The council is ready for your final statement," Trent announced. James and Rex followed him into the grand chamber where the full Galactic Council, minus several members who had resigned in disgrace, waited. Massive screens displayed the proceedings to billions across multiple systems. Council Chairperson Lynn stood as they entered. "Before you speak, I wish to formally acknowledge the Council's official findings. After reviewing all evidence provided by James Wilson, Alan Gray, and the surviving Vorath representative, we have confirmed systematic wrongdoing spanning over 100 years." She paused, visibly uncomfortable. "The classification of the Vorath as dangerous predators has been officially rescinded. Reparations for the near extinction of their species will begin immediately." James felt a weight lift from his shoulders. After weeks of fighting, the truth had finally been acknowledged. Rex stepped forward, activating his translator. The chamber fell silent, many members seeing a Vorath speak for the first time. "I stand before you as one of 6 remaining Vorath," he began, his voice echoing in the hushed room. "My people built cities that touched the stars. We developed medicines that could heal any wound. We valued knowledge above all else." He gestured toward James. "When I was injured and hunted, this human chose compassion over fear. He saw me as I am, not as your stories painted me. For that, I owe him my life. For that, our peoples might find peace." A murmur ran through the chamber. Rex continued. 3 more Vorath have been located since our story became known. They emerged from hiding, cautious but hopeful. With 9 of us remaining, our species might survive. We request a protected territory where we can rebuild and share what knowledge we haven't lost. Chairperson Lynn nodded. "Your request is granted. The Nexus system, including your ancestral homeworld, will be designated as sovereign Vorath territory, with human access permitted only by invitation." As the formal proceedings concluded, James noticed Alan standing at the back of the chamber. The old scientist had escaped sanctuary just before the council raid and had been instrumental in verifying the evidence they'd broadcast. Alan gave him a subtle thumbs up before disappearing into the crowd. 1 month later, James stood on the surface of the Vorath homeworld, watching as Rex greeted the other survivors. The planet, abandoned after the Council's cleansing operations decades earlier, still showed scars of the genocide. Yet the crystalline formations that had been the original target of the Council's greed now glowed with renewed energy as the Vorath moved among them. "They respond to us," Rex explained, noticing James's fascination. "The crystals are connected to our life force. As we return, they awaken." "Is that why you were all so hard to kill?" James asked. "Your connection to these crystals." Rex made a sound that James now recognized as laughter. "Perhaps, or perhaps we were simply too stubborn to disappear completely." A small ship landed nearby, the first official diplomatic vessel permitted on Vorath soil. From it emerged Commander Trent and Chairperson Lynn. "Welcome to the newly established embassy," James greeted them. As the officially appointed human ambassador to the Vorath, he now split his time between worlds. "The Interspecies Preservation Initiative has been approved," Lynn informed them. "With you and Rex as co-directors, if you're willing." Rex stepped forward. "We accept. The initiative will identify and protect endangered intelligent species throughout the galaxy. No more will be erased for convenience or profit." Commander Trent looked uncomfortable but determined. "My enforcement division has been reassigned to support your initiative. It seems fitting that those who once hunted the Vorath now protect them and others." As the sun set over the crystalline landscape, James watched Rex explaining something to the human visitors. The Vorith's gestures were animated, passionate about the future they were building. James smiled to himself. The galaxy's most feared predator was now its most valuable teacher, and he, a simple xenobiologist who had once followed all the rules, had helped change the course of history by making one compassionate choice. Sometimes, defying expectations changed everything.